Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and welcome. Baseload is not a law of physics. I want to start there because that single misconception that you probably always need large, always on power stations to keep the lights on has probably done more to slow the energy transition than any other idea. It sounds intuitive, it sounds sensible, but it's wrong. Or rather, it's a description of how a fossil fuel era grid was designed to work, not a description of how electricity must work. So if you think of the electricity grid as an operating system, like the software that runs on your phone or your computer, it has to do several things simultaneously. It needs to manage supply with demand in real time. It needs to maintain a stable frequency, 50 hertz in Europe or 60 in the US. It needs to manage power flow across thousands of kilometers of transmission lines and do all of this without any significant ability to actually store the product. In the fossil fuel era, this was relatively straightforward. You had a large predictable power station that could be turned up and down to match demand seasonally. The system is designed around the idea that supply follows the demand, and baseload stations could run continuously. You had mid-merit plants ramped up and down during the day, and then you had peakers that could handle the spikes. It was elegant in a way, very simple. But it was also expensive, highly inefficient, and locked into commodity price volatility. The fuel costs never really went away. An electrical energy system built around renewables, storage, and power electronics works differently. Supply does not simply follow demand. The system has to be smarter. It needs storage to absorb the excess generation and release it when needed. It needs grid-scale power electronics to maintain frequency stability, and it needs demand response to shift consumption towards periods of abundance. It needs high voltage direct current transmission to move power long distances with minimal losses. It's harder to engineer than the old system. I'm not going to pretend otherwise, but it's also much cheaper to operate. Because once you've built the infrastructure, the marginal cost of energy approaches zero. There is no fuel bill, no commodity exposure, no OPEC meeting that changes your cost structure overnight. And something interesting happens at this system level. It's just like a forest, where we've recently discovered below the physical network of trees, there's the secret fungal network, the mycorrhizal network, that exchanges nutrients and chemical signaling between the forest. The electricity grid is also developing its own version. So what looks like an AC system on the surface, the alternating current system, is increasingly being managed by a DC machine underneath, direct current machine. So solar panels, batteries, electric vehicles, data centers, power electronics, they're all DC assets. HVDC backbones clearly is a DC asset. DC interconnectors and converters dominate substations, and they're increasingly acting as the control layer of the grid. Now, this economics of this new operating system has profound implications, and I don't think most investors and policymakers or even energy professionals fully appreciate this completely different system. So a renewable energy generation asset is virtually all capital expenditure, yeah? So over the lifetime of a solar plant, probably 2% is OPEX, operating expenditure, and 98% is CapEx, upfront payment. For an onshore wind farm, it's slightly more, it's got more moving parts. It's roughly about 4% OPEX and 96% capital expenditure. So compare that with a coal plant, which is 60% capital expenditure and 40% operating costs, or a combined cycle gas turbine, which is 75% CapEx and 25% OPEX. This means that renewable plants are extremely sensitive to the cost of capital, but almost entirely insensitive to commodity prices. So once built, they're built. So if you can get the financing right, low cost of capital, the energy is effectively locked in for 25 years at a very, very predictable cost. There's no fuel price risks, no geopolitical risks, no supply risks, no carbon price risks. And this is what I mean when I say the system is shifting. It's shifting from fuels to capital. And that shift from ongoing variable costs to upfront fixed costs is the single most important structural change in the economics of energy. So the grid, it's not about the wires, it's about the operating system that operates underneath. So it's like an operating system for the modern economy. It can be upgraded, and the upgrade from a fossil fuels based system to an electric technical system is complex, it's capital intensive, institutionally challenging, but also once completed, it's structurally cheaper, more resilient, less exposed to the geopolitical shocks that have defined energy economics for the past century and the past few years. So baseload was a design choice, not a physical requirement. We are now designing something much better, much cheaper, and much more effective. Many thanks. This is Electrostate.